And it was very confusing because they said, "Oh, we'll never be ready for September 20th." I said, "Well, we've just been discussing it for 4 weeks, and you told us that it wouldn't be a problem." So we don't know if it's an injury. We don't know if he's just swanning around Las Vegas. We don't know if he's going to fight again. We don't really know what's happening. So from our point of view, Turki Al-Sheikh wasn't happy. That was the date that represented the good opportunity to, commercially maximise the event, and said, "Look, if you're not ready for September 20th, we're out." So that's his position. Obviously, the fight can still happen, but now we're talking to His Excellency about a whole host of other events. So the only information I can give you is we signed a 2-fight deal. We know what we signed up to. Of course, we'll honour that. And it appears Eubank's not either prepared to honour that or, I guess, ready to honour that. So we'll have to see how it plays out over the next couple of days.
Spoke to Conor yesterday, and he's of the mindset it's done. So what would you say to him then if he's thinking it's done?
Done in the respect of it's over?
Yeah,
Or done as...
yeah, I don't know. Obviously, he had that shaking hands with Shakur, and
I mean, look, Conor was ready to fight a week after the fight. So it's not the fastest turnaround in the world, but he's been on holiday for the last couple of months, and he's like, "I want to get back and I want to fight." Most of all, he wants the opportunity at revenge at Chris Eubank, because that's what we signed up to with them. We agreed, we ran it twice. So he's a little bit frustrated, but most of all, he wants to know what's happening. Conor's not the kind of guy where you can say, "Give it a couple of weeks, mate, let's just see what happens." He's phoning me every day saying, "I want to fight and I want to go back into training camp." And that was supposed to happen this weekend. He was supposed to fly to Mallorca this weekend. It's 10 weeks till September the 20th. And now he's kind of a little bit up in the air saying, "What am I going to do next?" So it's an interesting position. The whole world and his dog wants to fight Conor Benn. Doesn't matter whether it's, potentially Eubank. You've got Shakur Stevenson, Devin Haney, Teofimo Lopez, Ryan Garcia, all these people calling him out for fights. So he's in a great position. And ultimately, the dream was always to try and become world champion. And that's not going to happen up at 160. So now he's got to think about moving back down to 147 and trying to win a world championship at his weight class. You've got Barrios against Pacquiao this weekend. If Barrios comes through, I think that's a fight that really suits Conor Benn. There is a potential fight against Shakur, like you said, Teofimo, Ryan Garcia. So, yeah, it's exciting times. Just probably not the fight we anticipated next, but that's boxing.
Does it need a confirmation from the Eubank side then that this isn't happening?
Yeah, I spoke to T and Eubank. There's a few of them in the team. It's always good to speak to one person rather than 6. But these people that, speak directly to Eubank said, no, we want the fight, but we were just never going to be ready for September 20th. I said, that makes no sense. You're having meetings about that date with venues. So it seems like they're putting it down to a lack of communication with their team. So, look, for Eubank, I can't imagine him not wanting to take the fight unless he's not looking to fight again, because the money's huge. He's just won the first fight, but I do feel like, look, he spent 4 days in the hospital after that fight. It was a very taxing fight. And you've got to go back into training camp knowing that you've got to go to the trenches again. But this time, it's going to be even harder because Conor Benn has got the confidence, he's got the momentum, but most of all, he's got the activity. He was out of the ring for a year and a half prior to that. So maybe mentally sitting there at the World Series of Poker going, quite like my life at the moment. I woke up at 11 today. I had a couple of hours by the pool. I've got a nice dinner tonight. I don't want to go back to those places, of which you definitely can't blame him. But just strange that we've been getting it confirmed from their side. That's why Turki Al-Sheikh, I think, really had the hump, because we'd all been working together for September 20th. And then just when it was announced, it was like, "Oh, no, that's not, we won't be able to do that." So, yeah, confusing, but we can only control our side.
If Turkey's not involved with it, though, how does it happen?
It can still happen, but obviously, the contracts that we signed were extremely lucrative, and that might not be the same number without him. I mean, commercially, it's massive. We know that it's going to fill up any stadium in the country. The pay-per-view numbers were huge. So commercially, it can live on its own terms. But with His Excellency, You've got that, extra financial support. You've got that vision. You've got those promos. There's no expense spared. So, Ben Shalom called me yesterday, sort of scrambling around, saying, "Well, we could do it together." I said, "Well, sorry, we're already in talks now with His Excellency for other fights. So we've now got to look at the whole landscape for Conor Benn and make the right decision. He wants revenge on Eubank. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He's very disappointed that he won't get his hands on him on September 20th. So we'll have to see."
For you, then it has to come to a point, like maybe in a few days' time, Conor, we need to move on.
Yeah, we're already doing that. I mean, my job now is to look at all opportunities for Conor Benn. So, and that could include a Chris Eubank rematch, but we're not. These are definitely people that you know, you don't rely on, because we've already signed a contract, and that contract's not really been honoured. But they may say, "Well, no, we have an injury, or we have, we still want to make the fight." The problem is doing it on the right commercial terms in a stadium does lend itself to September. October gets risky. November's not really something you want to have a crack at in the UK. So, yeah, but now I'm already, in my head, park Eubank. Let me present 3 or 4 options for Conor Benn.
Let's go to AJ. This Jake Paul stuff keeps being talked about. Is it going to happen, Jake Paul v Anthony Joshua?
Yeah, I mean, look, Turkey came in and said, "I'm going to make that fight." And, I think Jake Paul's manager came out and said, "No one decides who Jake Paul fights but us." I mean, actually, I look like I've got a small ego in this situation, which is quite remarkable. For us, like, we want to fight Tyson Fury, but we are going to fight before that Tyson Fury fight, because I think Tyson Fury is not going to fight Anthony Joshua before spring, summer of 2026. So we have been out, or AJ's been out, for coming up to a year in September. So we definitely want to fight again. I had a meeting with His Excellency, who just met Jake Paul the night before. Jake Paul has reached out to Anthony Joshua a few times. I've spoken to Nikisa, Jake's manager. It's never a fight we anticipated. It's never a fight we've targeted. But if you want Jake Paul to be the warm-up fight, and obviously financially it's a great opportunity for AJ, and you want to provide AJ and probably in turn Matchroom with the opportunity to extinguish Jake Paul from the world of boxing, then maybe AJ will oblige. Look, Jake's a big, strong cruiserweight. I don't think it's particularly competitive, but we know that in the world we live in, a lot of people would watch it. It may be the biggest fight that can be made, bizarrely, in the sport. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, yeah, it's a great challenge. I think he gets flattened ASAP. But there'll be a huge amount of people globally that would want to watch that. So we'll see. His Excellency said to us, "Would you be interested in making the fight?" I can't say no, because until we know the proposal, maybe. And if Jake Paul is crazy enough to step in the ring with Anthony Joshua, and he might be, because of the amount of money that will be at stake, who knows? You could see AJ against Jake Paul next.
We talked Fury Joshua during lockdown, though, Ed. I mean, do you honestly think Tyson really wants to fight AJ? Because who cares what I think, but I don't think he does.
I think that, trying to understand that Tyson Fury has always been a tricky job. And I think that for both of them, I think it would be a huge disappointment if they didn't share the ring together. Will it change their life? Not really. But should they fight each other? Yeah, I think if they've still got that competitive streak, of course they should. From AJ's side, he really wants to fight Tyson Fury. I mean, he's always wanted to fight Tyson Fury. And it just seems now that without belts, without, I've got this, you've got this, I should be on this, it should just happen. But now both guys have been out the ring, particularly AJ, for a long time. So I don't think we would go straight into the Fury fight. But I think Fury, if he's not going to fight until next summer or whatever, he's going to want that comeback fight. And in turn, if we're waiting that long, we will then want that comeback fight. And then if they both win, I think it will happen. So, we've talked about the fight for a long time, and it's no point getting too excited. But you know, His Excellency does have a knack of making these fights. If he comes to us and says 2 fight deal, Jake Paul, Tyson Fury, you know, we'll sign ASAP.
Do you have an ideal month for when you think AJ will be back in the ring? And then who, if it's
No, I
not,
mean physically he would be ready from November. So you know, he's obviously had that elbow operation. That all went well. He's good. He's rested and recovered. He's pretty much ready to start back in camp. So anything from November. If it's not Jake Paul, I think he'll fight sooner rather than later. If it is, it's a huge fight that needs huge promotion. Might not need a huge training camp, but you know, we'll see.
but there's so many heavyweights around that whoever he fights will generate numbers. It's Anthony
It
Joshua.
will. It will. Obviously, look, Jake Paul is doing a great job commercially of driving numbers, and the power of him and Anthony would lead to, you know, maybe one of the most financially lucrative fights of all time, bizarrely, in the world that we live in. So, you know, there are so many opportunities out there for AJ. He can fight anywhere in the world. This fight is not planned to be a mega fight, or it wasn't. You know, it may end up being a mega fight with Jake again, bizarrely, but it's not, you know, it's the one that says, I've been out for a year. I want to get back in the ring. I want to get back to winning ways. But to be honest, Mike, they're all dangerous. You know, who are you going to fight instead? You know, I don't know, Wilder, Caballero, a Jagba, I don't know. I mean, Zhang, they're all dangerous, dangerous fights at heavyweight. So this is a part of Anthony's career that we've really got to map out in the right way. And we'll make sure we do that.
Um, Katie Taylor, incredible. I know how much she means to you. How many fights do you reckon she's got left, and what's your plans for her?
I mean, it was the first time that I heard Katie say, if I fight again, you know, in the presser. And it was bizarre because every time she steps out of the ring and we go back to the changing room, she's like this, you know, bumps out of her head, hair everywhere. And then she walks back after the Serrano fight, not a hair out of the place, you know, tiny mark under the eye. And it was so easy. And that's what she was supposed to do in 1 and 2. But thankfully for the memories, she gave us an all out war. This time it was just a boxing masterclass and she won easily. So is it a good way to bow out? Of course, you know, that would always be a great way. It's also difficult when you box really well and you've come back to the change room feeling so fresh. Like, I'll go again. You know, she definitely won't fight this year, I don't think. Um, and of course, the elephant in the room is Croke Park. You know, it's still, you've seen the Irish sports minister come out this week and say, "Oh, now it's time. You know, we'd love Katie to fight at Croke Park." It's like, I wish you would have done that a year or two ago, because we could have done that with Cameron, we could have done it with Serrano, could have done it with loads of people. So I think that carrot would be very difficult for Katie not to bite. You know, I think that would be the only thing that she hasn't really achieved. She's had huge Irish homecomings, but never Croke Park, obviously. Um, so yeah, I don't know if she'll fight again, if I'm honest. She's 39. She's done it all. She's beaten everyone she's ever faced, and you know, she is just will forever go down for me as the greatest female fighter of all time.